It's time for another trip back to the N64. This time with a more obscure title, Shadowgate 64, a game I played back when it released in 1999. I never actually owned the game back then, instead renting it a handful of times until finally getting through the entire adventure. I have a weird false memory of the game spanning 2 cartridges for some reason. It doesn't. No N64 game does, though apparently they are capable of it in theory. You would just need to swap the cartridges very quickly before the internal memory dropped. This has nothing to do with the rest of the video. The nerd in me just thought it was interesting and I thought I would share. Always good to hook new viewers with a madman's ramble right at the start of your video. Weirdly enough, despite this being an age of evolving technology and amazing releases, Shadowgate 64 always stood out to me as one of the most memorable and unique titles on the console. On its face, it's nothing too groundbreaking. Marketed as a first-person RPG adventure, with the whole generic save-the-world thing going on. The graphics were mediocre, gameplay was slow, and the world was not particularly fleshed out or well-known outside of niche audiences. So why is this game so memorable to those who played it? That's what we're going to find out today. Join me in rediscovering Castle Shadowgate and stopping the resurrection of ultimate evil in a dying kingdom before it's too late. Developed by Kemko and Infinite Ventures in 1999, Shadowgate 64 was actually not the first game in the series. Despite being released for the N64, the 64 in Shadowgate was not actually anything to do with the console. It was just pure coincidence, and Shadowgate 64 was just the 64th entry in the series. Does anyone believe that? That's my attempt at what the kids these days like to call gaslighting. I hope it elicited a small puff of humor-driven air to come out of your nostrils. But for real, the game was the third in the series, with the first being released for the Macintosh in 1987, and later released for the NES where it probably saw its widest audience. That first game was one of a few point-and-click first-person adventure games released at the time. I never actually played it, but I did play Deja Vu, a very similar game released by some of the same people that worked on Shadowgate. Essentially, it was King's Quest in first person. Shadowgate 2 released in 1993, and it was more the classic point-and-click type game, and it played in a stage perspective rather than first person like the first game. Both were standard puzzle-solving games like you would expect. Poke, push, combine, use, and talk your way to victory. The stories of these games have a vague tie-in to the world of Shadowgate 64, both inhabiting a better time before the world became stagnant and corrupt in the current game. That said, neither game needs to be played to understand what's going on in current-day Shadowgate. It stands as its own game in the series. The world we inhabit is Kal Torlin, a place once inhabited by great mythic beasts, powerful magics, and noble warriors. During this age of great heroes, the evil Warlock Lord was imprisoned within Shadowgate by the mighty sorcerer Lakmir the Timeless, and Lord Jair, his protege. Our tale takes place more than 100 years later. The forces of good have all but vanished from the land, and the forces of evil are once again rising. The castle of Shadowgate serves as little more than a den of thieves, but has caught the eye of an evil sorcerer, Belzar, who seeks to free the Warlock Lord and return ultimate evil to the world. We play as Del Cottonwood, a small, unassuming halfling, who at the time the story starts, is a member of a trade caravan passing close to Shadowgate. The caravan is waylaid by bandits, and everyone is killed and the goods stolen. Everyone except you. Fate would grant you some small reprieve from the attack, and instead we find ourselves imprisoned in the dungeons of the castle. Our first puzzle awaits. We need to get out of here. There isn't a ton to say on the gameplay of Shadowgate really, and that's sort of what makes it so damn unique not only on the console, but in general in the world of video gaming. You aren't going to find yourself stepping toe-to-toe with vicious beasts, or find yourself completing superhuman feats of strength. Dell is a small halfling, a child in the eyes of a human. You aren't particularly brave or smart, you are just here in a situation and trying to find your way out. Some might call this game one of the first walking simulators, but I think it goes a touch deeper than that. The gameplay revolves around moving through the environment, collecting items and solving puzzles to progress. Starting in your jail cell with a relatively simple puzzle in a small space, you eventually have the entire castle to move around and will find yourself solving puzzles of increasing complexity. Adventure games like this generally get a bad rap, either for having far too simple puzzles, or the polar opposite, where the puzzles are so complex and use such wild moon logic that solving them often comes down to luck more than logic. Luckily for us, this is not the case with Shadowgate. The puzzles range from simple to moderate complexity. However, help is always provided to those with an astute eye. Books and letters dot the landscape, and while many contain filler text with little more purpose than to build the world, most contain clues to solving puzzles. One example of this is mid-game. We need to get into an inn, but the surly innkeeper doesn't trust us. We need an in with the innkeeper. Talking to others in the town, we discover that he was close with a recently deceased woman. If we can prove we know her, we can get into the inn. And we've heard a powerful wizard Lakmir had a way to communicate with the dead. Perhaps we should explore his tower. You can see what I'm getting at. And while this may seem somewhat convoluted, it all clicks in the game. There were a couple parts where I found myself wandering, but mostly the puzzles hit the sweet spot that scratched my ego, making me feel smart for figuring things out, but didn't ever feel it was so complex and illogical as to be unsolvable. Now, you may think a simple puzzle solver means we aren't in danger during our quest, but that couldn't be further from the truth. There are a myriad of unique and interesting ways to die in Shadowgate, from things as mundane as tripping into a hole or drowning in some particularly deep water, to more fantastical deaths, like being turned into solid ice or being crushed to death by an overzealous jailer. Each death comes with its own unique dialogue screen, and these are generally pretty fun to read through. I think this one is my favorite. The sharp edges of the blades effortlessly slice into your upper body. You quickly lose all feeling as you slump over onto the ground. The blades continue to carve you up on your way down. The coldness envelops you as you lay in a pool of your own blood. Pretty grim. Awesome writing though. Last little gameplay you have is inventory and map management. The inventory is pretty basic. You have a page for books and a page for items. You can equip one thing at a time. Funnily enough, most of the items you pick up in this game are just red herrings. They have no real purpose and serve to distract you if you aren't paying attention. Hell, there's an entire shop that sells items for coins that have zero purpose outside filling up an inventory slot. Most equipable items you pick up have potential to kill you instantly. All very fun stuff that reinforces just how delicate life is in Kul Torlin. The in-game map is a completely missable pickup at the start of the game. I found it mostly unnecessary. The areas you explore are all unique enough that there is very little in the way of reusing whole areas, so it's tough to get too lost. Doesn't hurt either that the game world is actually relatively small. Speaking of small things, poor Dell has been waiting in his cell while I go on about gameplay. Let's go and see what that little fella's up to. Back in the cell, we don't have much to see here. A sad pile of hay to sleep in, and a window into our fellow prisoner's cell. He's having a nap, but Dell doesn't respect a proper work-life balance and rudely awakens him. Despite our unkind waking, the other prisoner is an amicable sort. He introduces himself as Agar, a magician looking to breach the legendary 4 towers of Shadowgate to learn their secrets. While attempting to break into one, he was captured and lost his spellbook, rendering him powerless. He now awaits his fate in the cell, and advises you do the same, as escape is unlikely. Agar also talks about how the 4 towers are warded, and no one can possibly breach them. This will be important to remember for later, when we're breaching the towers with wild abandon. Just then, our conversation is interrupted by the dungeon keeper. He has brought us a single chicken leg, the greatest of all dungeon meals. He also threatens us with death by torture, and this being our last meal and all that, but hey, chicken legs are great, so things are looking up for us. Actually, it just calls the meat some kind of beast, but chickens are technically beasts, so I'm still saying it's a chicken leg. Turkey leg at worst. We eat our delicious feast and decide to keep the bone. Searching about the cell, we can put the hay bed aside to reveal a hatch. It's not locked, but we need something to pry it open. Just the thing for a chicken/turkey bone. The way out is open. I need to add in here as well that the bone is never again used in the game, but Del never drops it. Throughout this entire journey, the little halfling never sets this bone down. What a mad lad. Anyhow, down the hatch and we land in the sewers. Gross. There's a skeleton and a random floating bottle we can literally never reach, so don't try. We get a creepy apparition of a ghost sneaking up on us, but we can't do much with him. For now, at least. He elicits a girly scream from Del. We snag a rusty iron bar, use it to topple a pillar, grab a pickaxe from the other side, and then use the pickaxe to climb a wall and breach into a new area. The Disciples' Tower. One of those nigh unreachable towers mentioned by Agar. Literally breached within 5 minutes of escaping our dungeon cell. I think Agar might just be a shitty mage, to be honest. Within the tower, we rob the place blind, picking up mostly books and small figurines we will be using shortly for a puzzle. Before we can reach the main study hall of the tower, a ghost stops us to have a chat. Unlike the last ghost who just creepily stared at us, this one is a regular chatterbox. The old Wish.com Gandalf is none other than Lakmir, legendary sorcerer who played a role in the original imprisonment of the Warlock Lord. He talks on taking the wide or the narrow path, and essentially thinks we may be able to save the kingdom, but he wants to test us to see if we have what it takes. He then vanishes. He will be reappearing a handful of times throughout the game, but we aren't going to be taking any paths, wide or narrow, if we can't escape this tower into the castle proper. The next area has us finding notes and reading. Lots and lots of reading. If you don't want to read, this is not the game for you. There are probably 2 to 3 dozen books to read before the game reaches its climax. Don't worry though, I'll summarize the good bits. Turns out the student magi here were working on a magical artifact called the Pixie Flute, but can't get it working. Our readings let us know that it employs life magic, which will probably react to sunlight. There's some sunlight in the main hall, we just need to find the flute and stick it in there. Next brain teaser coming up. We come into a room requiring 3 statues representing the evolution of man, but we have way more than 3. Now, if you didn't read the books, you might think monkey, caveman, man is the correct answer. You would be wrong. According to the many books we've read, the world has been reset multiple times as the balance of the universe has been disrupted. First, there were fairies, but a tumultuous event made them change into the elves, and then another event caused the change to humans. So fairy, elf, man is the correct sequence. It's okay if you got this wrong. Most people would forgive you. I won't, though. I will eternally be disappointed by your failure to solve the puzzle correctly. Read your books. Anyhow, we grab the Pixie Flute, play a tune in the window, and find ourselves shrunk to mini size. We climb down a string into the next area, the graveyard. Not much to do out here. We wander through, save a mouse from a bird, and move into the church. In here we find the very important dragon tears, a miracle holy water made from real dragon tears. Extra rare as no dragon has been seen in about 100 years. You would think the thieves would have found this first thing raiding the castle for shit to sell. I feel religious artifacts are always first to go after society collapses. Oh well, better for us. In the basement we find some keys, a crowbar, and an old lady's corpse with a death grip on her favorite book. We can't get that for now. I actually tried using the crowbar to break her fingers, but I guess Del was too squeamish for that. We instead use the crowbar to open a hatch onto the roof of the church, traverse a frankly unsafe walkway, and break a window into Lakmir's tower. 2 towers breached, no wards to be spoken of at all. In the tower, we raid the kitchen for some oil, find a bucket of water, and in an adjacent dining hall, find a scary purple fire we can't pass. Heading up the tower, Lakmir appears again, this time stating he has a gift for us, but we must first make it through his tower. Sure thing, bub. Entering the tower, the place takes on a bit of a weird metal steampunky vibe. We use our oil on some doors and get a nice cup that could probably hold water for putting out fires. And we find a giant piece of hair with a disturbing note next to it. Turns out the giant hair was meant for a potion in this supposedly benevolent place of learning. But on the receipt, the buyer also got 4 fairy wings. We learned earlier fairies are like full-on higher reasoning sentient beings, similar to humans. So having fairy wings on your itemized list of reagents is like akin to having a recipe with human legs or dwarf ears in it. Not generally something the good guys do. What are you getting up to in your tower, Lakmir? Anyhow, we take our cup, scoop some water, and dump it onto the fire. It doesn't work. That's my mistake. This isn't normal fire. This is advanced purple fire. We add some dragon tears to the water to make it more magical, try again, and this time succeed in putting out the fire. Using an emblem we found in the steampunk engine room from earlier, we can activate something behind the fire and now have access to deeper regions of the tower. Lakmir pokes us again, and we have another test, this time a teleporter maze. You touch the statues and teleport to more statues. This took me way longer than I care to admit. I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason to this maze. I just clicked statues at random until I lucked my way through. In the heart of the tower now, we solve some more puzzles. One being sort of a neat set piece where the ceiling becomes a starry night with a hidden keyhole. At the end of it all, we breach the inner sanctum and receive 3 rings with 3 distinct effects. The blue ring reverses your controls. The green ring just kills you. And the red, the one we really want, lets you speak with the dead. Pretty cool. Lakmir appears again and we get a cutaway to things going on in the main castle. Belzar, now revealed to be a disciple of Lakmir turned evil, is trying to free the Warlock Lord with the legendary Staff of Ages, an ancient relic of massive power that he believes was found under the castle. Lakmir reveals not all is as it seems. The staff recovered by Belzar is not the Staff of Ages, but something else. The last dragon also still lives and can be found somewhere in the castle. We need to find it to proceed. He gives little in the way of actual direction, outside seeking someone named Dorn in the first tower. So may as well do that. On the way there, we first talk to that dead woman who was holding a book from earlier. Turns out she is the mother of Saul, an adventurer who used to seek gold and treasures to make his mother proud, but had become distant after a mysterious discovery under the castle with his friend, Lucas. She died not long after he last left to seek his treasure. She gives us her book detailing some family history, and her pendant which she wants to have delivered to her son if we find him. Moving past the old woman's crypt, we come through a door into the sewers we started in. Now that we have the Ring of the Dead, we can talk to that ghost from the start. Turns out, he is Lucas, Saul's friend and adventuring buddy. Turns out Saul found a staff under the castle and was driven so mad by it he killed Lucas and brought the staff to Belzar. Cool lore info, but really does little to help us. Worth remembering for later, this is clearly a staff of great power, but according to Lakmir, the Staff of Ages, the one really needed, has not been found. So what this staff is exactly is unclear. Back in the tower, we find Dorn, another ghost mourning the loss of his granddaughter, who has been missing for some time. He wants to help us with our quest, but wants us to find his granddaughter for him first. We take her slipper off a nearby table and head out of the tower, this time through the front door, rather than through the window like last time. We are now in Shadowgate proper. There is a lot of wandering around you can do here. The bandit captain is surprisingly friendly, and gives hints to many things we should be doing. Helpful to talk to if you aren't sure where to go next. But for now, the best thing to do is move about the castle in a big circle, picking up what we can. First, a weird coin collector is blocking access to a junk pile. This is the sort of game where you want to leave no stone unturned and no junk pile unscoured, so we need to get him to go away. I don't remember where I even picked it up, but I've had this rare ancient coin for a while. If we let him look at it, he runs away with it. Damn den of thieves, this place. Whatever. He moves out of the way of the junk, and we find another slipper to match the one that we got from Dorn. Now we just need to find the owner. As a weird side note, there is a scholar, Rastalin, in a building here. He is notable as being the only character that seems to serve no real purpose. I mean, I guess the bandit captain is also only really a signpost. But this guy adds little to the actual game or even the story. Everything he says we already know. Weird addition. Anyhow, we come to a big courtyard before long, with a statue of the now dead Lord Jair, the knight that vanquished the Warlock Lord with Lakmir so long ago. Cool. Off to the side is an aqueduct, and using the Ring of the Dead we find the little girl drowned here. We give her her missing shoes and she heads back to Dorne. We also return to Dorne and are given the Stone of Thirst. It will apparently help us make a path to the third tower, the Tower of Trials, but we need some command words to use it that Dorne doesn't have. Seems like half a reward for a full job, but whatever. Turns out getting the command words is pretty simple. The incantation is known to anyone who has completed training as a sorcerer. Good news for us, a whole graveyard of sorcerers are out front. One in particular is upset for dabbling in the dark arts and eternally cursing his soul. We cleanse his grave with dragon tears, and to show his appreciation, he gifts us the incantation. We'll be off to drain the aquifer soon, but there's another score to settle first. We visit the inn, and wearing the dead woman's pendant from earlier and answering some questions, we're able to earn the innkeeper's trust. Once inside, there's a sorceress as the only other guest of the inn. We have an interesting chat with her. She knows just who we are, and even predicted our arrival here. She went so far as to inform the bandits that attacked and captured us we had valuable knowledge, and that's apparently why they didn't kill us and were planning torture. She wants us to save the world's least effective mage, Agar, from the dungeon. Before we leave, we explore the second floor of the inn and find a disgusting mess in one of the rooms. There are 2 empty wine bottles and 2 empty glasses, one of which is on its side. Clearly, this room hasn't been cleaned in years. Anyhow, we can just walk into the bandit lair. For whatever reason, that bandit captain just does not give a shit. The dungeon keeper still does though. He will still kill us on sight. Now, in the thieves' lair, we can find all sorts of weapons and implements of death, but that is way too easy an answer for a puzzle game, and instead we need to distract the keeper in a far more convoluted way. First, we talk to a troubadour the bandits were keeping for entertainment. Listening to all 3 of his songs will lead him to reveal that the dungeon keeper likes to play the violin. Seems like a hint to me. He also gives us a single flower. We take that flower to the graveyard and put it on the grave of a wealthy man who was ignored in death. The wealthy man is so grateful, he releases his greatest treasure to us. We need to retrieve it from its guardian in the sewer. We head back down, talk to the ghostly guardian, and get a massive pile of gold coins. We take that gold to the shopkeeper. Yes, there is a shopkeeper. Nothing he sells for normal coins has a use. We give the shopkeeper the entire fortune for 1 violin. We bring the violin to the keeper, hide around a corner when he comes to play, and then sneak the key off the wall and head into the dungeon. Once inside, we free Agar, give him a magical orb from the sorceress, and he is able to switch us with the dungeon keeper, imprisoning him and setting us free. I mean, that worked. But this was easily the most convoluted puzzle in the game and had you literally from one corner of the map to the next. There was a wall of spears. We could have just killed the keeper and been done with it. As it stands now, he is locked in a cell presumably to starve to death. We should at least have given him a chicken leg so he had a chance to survive. Oh well, it was fun anyway. Once we go back to the inn, Agar and the sorceress are there to thank us and say goodbye. Agar gives us access to his house as a reward, and teleports away. A funny scene follows. Apparently neither of them actually paid the innkeeper for their stay. Sucks to suck. In Agar's house we get a few useful items. A lever, a flint, and a gold tooth. We can now move into the aquifer and drain part of it with the Stone of Thirst from earlier. Once in, we find a control room, activate the full drainage system with that lever we found, and just like that, the path to the Tower of Trials is open. Inside, we're told things aren't what they seem. There is a steward from the tower named Nathor Dresslin, a member of a family who were in line for the throne, but when Lord Jair vanquished the Warlock Lord, he was made king instead. They still hold a grudge even from Deadside. Lots of lore stuff surrounding this, but all it really means is the first part of the tower you will need to answer trivia as though Dreslin took the throne rather than Lord Jer. Coming to it, the tower is broken into several major sections. First, we go through a gauntlet of trivia about just about anything and everything. Hope you were paying attention. Luckily, wrong answers just teleport you to the start and don't kill you. That's more than can be said for the next section, which is a gauntlet of instant kill death blades that you must navigate through with reversed controls. You can actually wear the blue ring from earlier to unreverse the controls, but I was too stupid to realize that until much later, so I just struggled through with backwards controls. Next is a timed maze where you must carry a candle through to the other side before it goes out. No lie, I did look up a walkthrough for this one. It is a mess of convoluted button pressing and just surpassed my patience level to figure out. The candle timer just adding to the frustration. Probably the only puzzle in the game I really didn't care for. Don't get it wrong though. As much as this was frustrating, it was by no means unsolvable. Were I a more patient man, I could have spent time with the trial and error and eventually found my way through. Last trial, we find 3 mirrors, each with a reflection of ourselves. Each reflection speaks, and you must decide which one matches Dell's personality and proceed through that mirror. Marching through, we come to the end and receive the Ring of the Kingdom, a legendary ring given only to those passing the trials and granting full access to Shadowgate. Buzzing right along, we have 1 tower left. We take our fancy new ring and use it to access a room previously locked in the first tower. Inside there, we find the Dragon Flute, and using that, we can access the final tower, the Tower of Dragons. I wonder what could be in there. This tower is much shorter than the others, but it also has a pretty tough puzzle at the end. We find the ghost of the last Dragon Keeper and his broken instrument. You can fix the instrument, then he will play you a song. The puzzle here is to memorize that song, go into the next room, and try to play it using the wings of the various dragon statues. Lots of trial and error later, we find ourselves at the top of the tower with a very sleepy dragon. He has a stick stuck in his head. This is apparently the Staff of Ages. Pulling it out, the dragon awakens and gives us a lift back to the city, which is now in a panic. The release of the Warlock Lord is at hand, and Belzar's guards are looking for you. We are let off next to the stables, so naturally we set them on fire like an absolute lunatic to distract the guards. One final obstacle is Saul, the man who found the staff Belzar is using to resurrect the Warlock Lord. Showing him his dead mother's pendant, Saul has a breakdown and goes to distract the guards. Into the central chamber to stop the awakening. This room is the Chamber of Holding, a large room where the Warlock Lord is sealed away. Hilariously, you can peek around the corner and see Belzar just chilling, being blissfully unaware. If you get too close, he will horribly kill you by turning you into ice, but it's funny just how close you can get before this happens. The dude must have traded his eyesight for evil powers. Anyhow, in the center of the chamber is the staff Saul gave Belzar. We know this isn't the Staff of Ages, as we hold that ourselves. So what is this? It's clearly powerful enough to drive Saul mad and fool Belzar. Turns out, this is the Staff of Thunder, twin staff to the Staff of Ages, that was lost over 100 years ago. The power rivals that of the Staff of Ages, but with the key difference being its uncontrollable nature. We stick a dragon eyeball on top of it that we found earlier, and move to hide behind a pillar. Belzar comes out and does some chanting to summon the Warlock Lord, not realizing that the staff in his possession cannot be controlled. I have to play the scene of what happens next. Between the chanting and the hilarious sound choices, it has to be seen for full effect. That stock scream sound effect gets me every time. Whoa! Wannabe Ganondorf got what was coming. Anyhow, in the aftermath of that, the entirety of Shadowgate is leveled, and the Warlock Lord is now free. All the people you've been interacting with on your journey are presumably dead. Bummer. There is a 100% chance they're gonna haunt us forever. Lakmir appears and confirms that Belzar is also dead from the resultant chaos the Staff of Thunder caused, and seems pretty convinced we aren't able to beat the now free Warlock Lord. He may be right, but perhaps someone can help us. Rushing through the rubble of the castle, we find ourselves in the courtyard with that statue of Lord Jer, with the ominous Warlock Lord looking down on us. The solution here is actually pretty simple. We need to place the Ring of the Kingdom and the Staff of Ages in the hands of Jer's statue. This will bring the statue to life, and he hurls the staff right into the Warlock Lord's eyeball. This causes an influx of magical energy that may have spelt our doom, but our dragon buddy from earlier swoops down to carry us away. And that's it! A satisfying end to a satisfying game. This review is an excerpt from IGN, posted in 1999, the year of the game's release. Shadowgate 64 is quite simply Shadowgate for the N64. It stays very true to the concepts behind the original games, which in this case may be a bad thing because of the breadth of today's video game marketplace. Extreme puzzle fans and die-hard Shadowgate fans will love the N64 version of the classic Brain Twister. But for the rest of us, RPGs have developed so much in the last few years that there's no reason to sacrifice action for great problem-solving elements. We can't tell you how frustrating it was having neither the ass-kicking guns nor worthless bad guys to blow away as we patrolled the hallways of Castle Shadowgate with our controllers set on Turok style, perfect for destruction. I feel like this take misses the point entirely, as does the larger review this summary is coming from. Shadowgate 64 is absolutely an adventure game, but comparing it to the original from the 80s, saying nothing has changed is just factually incorrect. It's like saying, oh, Half-Life is exactly like Doom, only newer. The addition of a 3D world and proper sound makes a world of difference in a game like this. The original was a point-and-click adventure. This is also an adventure, but you have so much more direct control over what's going on, heightening the immersion tenfold. The puzzles on offer in Shadowgate 64 hit a sweet spot of being difficult, but not impossible. And I feel the only way someone would think this game is unsolvable would be that they have tried to progress without reading and exploring, which is like the entire point of the game. He even complains about the statue puzzle from early in the game being too difficult. It literally requires reading a couple pages from a book right next to the puzzle. Apparently that's too complex. They keep mentioning the lack of action and guns throughout the entire review, and again, I feel they are just totally missing the point. Shadowgate 64 is a slow-paced, atmospheric adventure game. Calling it an RPG is a bit of a stretch. I haven't really spoken heavily on it yet, but this game is all about the vibe. You really feel the weight of the lonely, desolate world you're moving through. Big aspects that drive that point home are the melancholy music, creaky castle floorboards, and the lonely atmosphere that is prevalent throughout. The review, in another part, says, "The sound is as devoid of life as the graphics and gameplay." My dude, The game is about exploring a haunted castle in a world where the light of good is fading away. Did you want Metallica to be blasting the whole time? The sound and music fit this game perfectly. Adding in action sequences and heavy metal music to accompany it would destroy the super unique experience this game was, and still is to this day. The reason Shadowgate 64 is so memorable is because it chose to do something different on the console. The worst part is the reviewer continually making comparisons to FPS games, like Turok throughout his review. Like, simply being in a first-person perspective instantly means the game has to be a shooter is so narrow-minded and disappointing for what is a professional reviewer. Good to know that video game reviewers haven't changed over the years, just taking a base-level impression and refusing to look any deeper. This entire review reads like a spoiled child who is upset this isn't a clone of another game he already likes. Believe it or not, an adventure game is not an FPS. Wild take, I know. We started this video with the question of, why is Shadowgate 64 so memorable? And as much as I have rambled and raved for the last while, I still feel like I haven't quite answered that initial question. Honestly, I'm not sure that I can. The game is super unique for the console and gaming world in general, especially considering the time it released. Making something so slow-paced and cerebral was a bold move for the developers, especially considering this was an N64 exclusive, a console often targeted towards younger audiences and couch co-op. Unfortunately, this led to unfair comparisons. People expected more and were left wanting, but those that played this for what it was supposed to be found something extremely rewarding and special. The atmosphere in this title is some of the best I've played. Everything just fits. The slow music, the creepy sound effects, even the uncanny animations when you take actions in this game. They just create this vibe that's hard to match. The world feels like it's on the brink of destruction, like we're striding through a once great kingdom that will soon fade into little more than a distant memory. Couple that with an interesting story, memorable puzzles, and those unique chunky graphics only the N64 could create, and you had something really special on your hands. But if that's not enough, I challenge you to pick up this game and give it a try, and let me know what you think of it. Is my view tainted by rose-colored glasses, or is this game truly the unique masterpiece I remember it as? Regardless, Shadowgate 64 is a title that won't be leaving my memory anytime soon. See you in the next video.